Hi, my name's Jelena Dokic, and you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on gogoodman.com.au.
Why write a book? And I know that sounds like a weird question, but from a mental perspective, because I've listened to a few other interviews and people have always said that they assumed it's a certain way when you particularly wrote the book, but why write a book? Why put yourself through that, I want to say, mental strain of bringing up all those memories, and not only bringing them up, but putting them on paper for everyone to read? Why put yourself through that, first of all?
I don't think it's as bad as you kind of made it sound, because for me, actually, in the end, it was actually the opposite. It was very cathartic, and it was definitely a story, I think, and my life story that needed to be, I think, told for a lot of reasons. Yes, it was hard in the process, almost reliving a lot of those, bad experiences that I talk about in the book, and there's obviously a lot of them. But I think all in all, it was really important for a lot of reasons. It was much bigger than me, going through some tough times in the process of writing the book, because there's a lot to be learned, I think, from everything that I went through, from kind of my case of, abuse and everything else. And I also, for me personally, I felt like I really needed to do this. I was constantly, through the years and through my career, I was constantly quiet about everything, and I felt like, I should put it out there, exactly what happened, what was going on, and what that looked like.
So did you feel like you owed anybody an explanation?
Not necessarily, but I definitely feel like, through the years, my career, I feel like, I started on the tour very early, and obviously a lot was going on. A lot of it was documented, with my father. A lot of it is on the internet. And, I supported him at the beginning when I was underage, but then I left home when I was 19, because I obviously didn't agree with anything that he was doing and didn't want to be a part of that. But I never really gave interviews. I never really commented too much on it, and I don't really feel like people got to know the real me as a person and as a player. That's why I did it. But as I said, it's a lot bigger than just me and the book, because I think a lot of people, whether that's parents, whether it's women, whether it's children, can learn from this book, from everything that I went through, and I think, it can help a lot of people deal with certain things.
An interesting aspect of the book is that you wrote it in present tense. Was that a specific style you discussed with Jessica when you wrote the book with her?
Oh, that's how you write the book. That's how you do it. You talk about it in past. You always talk about it as present, and that's how you write the book.
Now, you mentioned a few times in the book that Monica Seles inspired you and your dad. Were you tennis fans before he bought you a racket?
Well, I was too small to know anything, whether I was a tennis fan or not, because I started playing it at the age of 6. So I wouldn't necessarily say I was a fan or that I knew about it, because I was obviously way too small.
And there's a few times in the book where you mentioned that the tennis dream is your dad's dream, and then the tennis dream is your dream. Was there a specific moment when tennis transferred from your dad's dream to your dream?
Oh, look, I always enjoyed tennis. It was a big passion of mine, and always will be. Whether obviously I was pushed into it, and I went through a whole lot of abuse because of it, from physical to emotional, verbal, absolutely, from literally the first day I started playing tennis when I was 6. And it was kind of pushed onto me, something that I had to do, but at the same time I really loved tennis. I wouldn't have continued playing, and I wouldn't have gotten as high as I was if I didn't, because no matter how much someone pushes you and wants it, if you don't want it, and if you don't enjoy doing it, if you don't love it, it stops at one stage. So for me, it was definitely something that I wanted to do. Hard to say when I realized that, because when you're small, you're kind of just going through it, you're training. But maybe at the age of 12, 13, I was always really competitive, but then that's probably when I realized, okay, I really want to do this professionally, and I really want to, follow through with this and be the best that I can be.
An interesting part of the book, which kind of it was interesting to me, and there was a lot of it might be like a minor point, and I've asked a couple of people about this. Why was your dad so against you practicing spin, even to the extent of sacking a coach because he was helping you practice topspin?
Well, look, this is just something that he believed in. He believed in that game style. He wanted me to be, a lot more aggressive and hit the ball a bit flatter. He, believed that I would be, losing time if I was adding a lot more topspin to my shots. And that's just something that he believed in, something that he thought that was the way that I should be playing. And yeah, look, I was obviously very young when that was kind of happening, and he had this vision of what he wanted my game to look like, and that was the reason why.
So it wasn't a matter of, I guess, keeping up with the times. Maybe spin wasn't as popular back in the 90s as it is now. You look at all these Spanish players coming through, and they're absolutely amazing using spin of all different kinds. Was it? Well,
not really. Yeah. I don't think that's correct. Not really, because the women hit even harder and flatter than they did in the 90s. So no, that's actually the opposite. Okay. We're not talking about men's tennis here. We're talking about women's tennis.
True. Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, not really. I think but I think if you look at any of the women that have been at the top, especially in top, 5, top 3, top, whoever was number 1 in the world, they're all pretty hard, hitters, hit the ball quite hard and flat. That's just the way that women play, and they do today as well.
This is a bit of a, I don't know if it's going to sound right. Is there any part of you that feels that to some extent your dad's regime helped you reach the height that you did?
Well, I think he did have a vision. I think he was right about, things that had anything to do with tennis. I say that in the book as well. I think he had the right idea and the way that I should train, and the way that he pushed me to train, and the things that he pushed me to work on. I think most of them were correct. I think he was also good at, kind of at times stepping aside, getting coaches, getting world-class coaches and learning from them, and then, getting me to implement that in my game. So I think as far as that's concerned, I do think he had the kind of the right idea. I don't think he went about it the right way, obviously. But, if we're looking at it from a perspective of the way that he coached me, and anything that had to do with my game and the tactics and the technique, he kind of knew what he was talking about it, and he was learning along the way as well. He was quite good at that. But again, that doesn't justify everything else that he did and the way that he went about it.
Absolutely not. And the craziest thing about the book, in my opinion, is there were stages when you wanted your dad with you, and there were stages when you didn't. You were traveling the tennis circuit while going through this crazy mental roller coaster in plain view of the public to some extent. And tennis was also to an extent a cause of this lifestyle. Even when you split from your dad, you couldn't quite get it all together mentally. And a question you've been asked a lot is, why did you never tell anyone on the tour?
Well, that's a lot deeper question. No one knows whether, who you talk to, who your people are closest to you, and exactly what goes on. That's a lot deeper conversation. So, those things are kind of, maybe for another time, another book, exactly the way that things went on, because, when you are writing a book, you've got obviously some limited space there. And I feel like I still probably had material for another book. So, it's tough because, I went through obviously a very tough time with him, from the incredible abuse that I suffered, but then also knowing that everything that he was doing was wrong. I struggled with, the public embarrassment that got worse and worse. I left home when I was 19. And then, I didn't struggle because I left. I struggled because he continued to make my life difficult. I struggled because, also financially, again, something that I write in the book, that, the amount of money that I gave him, and, things continue just not to be good enough. And that ultimately, obviously led me to battle really heavy depression for almost 10 years and almost commit suicide. So it's a lot it's a lot bigger and deeper than just leaving home and having this mental battle and not having him on the court. It's a lot bigger than that. Ultimately, what led me to really have a difficult time mentally was having over 20 years of abuse and having to deal with that. So I don't think it really had anything, to be honest with you, to do with tennis.
That's an interesting point for my next question. How have you? It's such, you can say that now, but at such a young age, you wouldn't have been able to, I'm guessing, differentiate between your mental state and between tennis when they were both intertwining so much. So how have you maintained that love of tennis?
Well, like I said, I don't think when you love something, as much as I love tennis, I don't think there was ever a hate relationship there. Even when I went through really difficult moments, was it hard to play, and was I very often, not at my best mentally and physically because of everything that was going on? Absolutely. But and I knew that, but I still wanted to go out. I still wanted to compete, and the reason for that was because I really did want to be out there on the court, and I did love tennis. So there was never really a question of me, not loving tennis anymore, not wanting to go out on the court. That was never really a problem. I actually had the opposite problem. It was the fact that I wanted to play, but I wasn't capable mentally for, quite a few years there, because you got to be 100% going out there, competing and being in such a individual professional sport.
So in terms of maybe you look at like overdosing on something, and not only overdosing on something, but overdosing on something against your will, even if you enjoy it as much as you do and as much as you did. Was there a stage where you lost that love of tennis because you were living it 24/7 and you never got a break?
Look, I didn't. Maybe some other people would. As I said, it's as simple as, look, I loved tennis. So for me, it wasn't a problem. Would it be a problem for, other people? Probably. I know a lot of people that were pushed to do certain things and, it just wasn't for them. They just didn't love tennis or whatever they were doing. So, look, I can only talk from my experience. For me, it didn't. I love tennis, as I said. I do today. I always will. Again, was it hard at times to go on the court because my mind wasn't able to be completely and 100% focused on tennis? Yeah, it was. But, I never really had a problem with that kind of, really the love of tennis. And like I said, I can only speak for myself. Maybe other people would.
How do you want readers to feel about your book, Unbreakable? Have you had people tell you they've enjoyed it? Is that a reaction you're comfortable with? It doesn't feel like a kind of an adjective or a verb you want people to say.
I'm not sure you can say you would enjoy it. I think I say to people, look, I hope you do like the read. I hope you like the book, because I think, obviously it's a hard read and I'm very open and honest in the book. At times it's a hard, raw book. I talk about the abuse. I go into detail of what that looked like and what that felt like. And, look, is it a tough read? Yes, it is. But I want people still to come out at the end of it saying, there's something positive that comes out of this. She's good now. She's happy. She went through all of this. This is great. She's so strong and she's still here today because she, at one stage, almost, did commit suicide because of everything that happened. So that's what I want people to kind of come out at the other end after reading the book and saying, well, there is a happy ending. And there's a lot that you can learn from this book, which is why I would, still want people, maybe not necessarily enjoy, but I would still say, I do hope you liked it in the end. Yeah.
And yeah, the part that I enjoyed as much as I knew bits and pieces of the abuse you went through, just the players that you crossed paths with and absolutely destroyed. There's a nostalgic aspect to it as well, because some of the players are still playing today, but some of the players were great players of their time. You look at like Anastasia Moschino or Dinara Safina, and you literally steamrolled them. So, like, there was an aspect of tennis history in the book as well, which parts of that I enjoyed, but it was intertwined with a bigger story, as you've mentioned.
Well, yeah, my life and my story is, and it's as simple as that. Some people even myself, I would like to have talked maybe a bit more about the tennis part, and maybe I'll get another chance to do that, maybe write something else. But, this is a lot bigger than that, because my career and my tennis was very connected to, everything that I write about, again, from the abuse to, being a refugee twice, to facing racism and bullying, and then mental illness, and like I said, almost taking my own life. So these are very serious subjects that, again, I really wanted to talk about. And I tried to put, obviously, the tennis part in there as well. That's obviously very, very important. Maybe not as much as I would have liked to have talked about tennis, but there's, these very important issues in sport, in tennis, and society that I felt like I needed to talk about, and things that were a part of my life. So, yeah, look, maybe I will get another chance to write a bit more, about the tennis and about the tour and results and training and competing and things like that. I'm sure I'll get another chance to do that, or hopefully I will. But, like this, I like the way that this book is, because I brought all of those extremely important issues. I spoke about them very openly, very honestly, and I'm glad I did.
Now you're back on the tennis tour as a commentator. Does it bring back mainly good memories? And the thing I like about the tennis tour is that, one, there's barely any racial trouble from the fans, which is great for a sport that has so many different nationalities interacting with each other. And two is that they keep the past players on the Legends Tour, or as commentators or as coaches. They keep them all in that kind of community, and it's great for the fans to see. So have you enjoyed being back on the tour as a commentator?
Well, you're not really back on the tour as a commentator. There's no tour for commentators, so it doesn't really work like that. Look, I do love that part of it, the commentating, the TV. I'm not necessarily, like I said, back on the tour. We do some tournaments, but you're not completely there. You do see some of the players. You spend a lot of days, very long days and nights, in booths and commentating. I do get to meet a lot of, great people, and I get to work with a lot of great people. But, look, it's not like every single person that has played in the past gets to commentate and gets to work on the tour. It's not really like that. There's limited space, and, especially I think even for the women, because the men actually have their own Legends Tour. The women don't. Only at the Grand Slams there are some matches for women, whereas, men, they actually have a lot more exhibitions and tournaments in the Legends. So, it's not as, I think as easy as you made it sound. I think you've got to also have a whole lot of knowledge and talent. And not everyone loves to do, certain things that are still kind of connected to tennis, whether that's coaching, whether that's commentating. So, there are some people that I've played with in the past that do this, but not everyone, you still don't get to see sometimes a whole lot of people that you used to play with.
Why is there no Legends Tour for the women? I didn't realise that.
I'm not sure.
That's got to change. How has tennis changed since you were playing? As a commentator, you've obviously got to analyse. So how has tennis changed since you were a player? You said that the women have a lot more have a lot more power in their strokes. What else have you seen?
Well, it depends. Have more power. Every year we talk about more power and more power and more power. I mean, it doesn't necessarily go like that, because we would, be having matches where there would be, one-stroke rallies or two-stroke rallies. So it's not necessarily like that. There's been that conversation for years and years. I've come up, in kind of an era where I came up with some of the biggest hitters ever that have played tennis. So, I was kind of in that group that everyone, used to hit the ball really powerful and really hard and flat. A lot of the girls, like I said, they hit harder and flatter. But look, there's been a lot of advances from equipment, obviously with the rackets and with the string. Even when I came on tour, about 15 to 20 years ago, it was very, very different with the rackets and with the string. There's been a lot of advance in a lot of things that have kind of, made the game a bit faster and more powerful.
And as bad as it sounds, keeping on tennis, do you think Serena Williams taking a break, obviously to have a baby, and Azarenka's been out for a little bit as well, Sharapova obviously had the ban as well, do you think those three players having some time away from the tour has been as bad as it sounds, good for the game because it's given players like Halep and Wozniacki to kind of strive a little bit when there isn't such dominant players like Serena Williams has been over the past 15, 16 years. Do you think it's given other, I guess, not other female players time to strive and time to get better without having such a dominant figure on tour, at least on the court?
Not necessarily better, but they've had a chance, certainly. I think when Serena's around, you can't count her out. I think she showed that, even by winning that last Australian Open when she was obviously pregnant, which she announced later. So, look, I to be honest with you, I think whenever someone like Serena's not playing, I think I think it's a loss for the game, to be honest. Yes, she's very dominant, but she's so good. She's an incredible player. Probably will be the greatest of all time. And I think it's always a loss. I think when she doesn't play, that's how I look at it. Yes, it's given a chance probably to a few other players. With someone like Azarenka and Serena. Not being around and not playing because they were very dominant, even Azarenka. So, it's given a chance to a few other players, but I think it's also good to see Serena back. I definitely obviously think that she's got more tennis in her and a lot more years left. And look, I would love to see her again, winning and winning Grand Slams.
Do you think the women's game is very even at the moment? I mean, if it's hard to compare, but if you compare it to the men's game over the past 10, 15, 20 years, most of the time, apart from now, there's always been a top four that has been very dominant. The women's hasn't really had that. They've had a top two that have been dominant on and off. But now, do you feel like the spread is very even and anyone can come out if Serena's not having a good day?
Well, it's not. There's no one really that dominates. There is probably now I don't know how many, maybe 10 players that could potentially win big tournaments and Grand Slams. Yeah, so we don't quite have that domination. I think in the women's tennis, certainly not that we have maybe 2 or 3 players that you can say will always kind of go towards the end of those big tournaments. We've seen, what's happened in probably even last year. So many different Grand Slam winners. And, I think it'll probably still kind of stay like that probably this year as well.
Unbreakable has now gone international only recently. Has the response been as accepting and as maybe, I don't know if the right word is empathetic, as it has been here in Australia?
Yeah, it has. It's been amazing. It's been amazing everywhere. It's been incredible with the amount of, I think, support, attention, and just incredible, notes and messages and different things that people write to me and just the huge interest in the book, both in Australia and internationally.
And now you, if I'm correct, you call Melbourne home. So when it comes to tennis and events in general, what makes Melbourne special? Why are you proud to now call Melbourne your home?
Well, I've called Melbourne home for a while. It's not now. It's nothing new. I did grow up in Sydney, but I stayed here because, the second part of my career I spent in Melbourne because of all the training and the Australian Open being here. So it kind of, it was just kind of a natural fit to stay here, really. A lot of my work as well is in Melbourne. So, it just feels like a right fit.
And what's next? Where can people find you? I know you're on Instagram. Your book's gone international now. It's at all kinds of bookstores, online, and everything. What's next, and where can people find you? I've
got a lot of new things that I'm working on. Can't quite talk about them yet. Probably will be making those announcements in the coming weeks. But there's a lot, obviously, on top of my commentary and TV work, I did talk about starting my own foundation earlier in the year, so I can talk about that, which will be happening a bit later on this year and early next year. And continuing with the book as well. Internationally there'll be a lot of work and also translating into other languages, audiobooks as well. So yeah, all of my work with the book isn't quite done yet. There's still quite a few things to do, and motivational speaking I do quite a bit of as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things I kind of do. I don't just do one thing. So yeah, I'm glad that I've got the opportunity to do different things that I like.
2 questions come from that. Are Channel 7 going to take you to Wimbledon to commentate?
Not sure.
Not sure?
Not sure about that. I can't talk about that just yet.
Just yet? Okay. And the other thing is, are you going to be doing your audiobook, or are you going to get someone else to read it?
No, someone else will be reading it. That's how it works.
Right. Jelena Dokic, I've always wanted to interview a tennis player, so you're my first in that regard, and there's obviously a much deeper story here, so I didn't want to go into too much detail of the book because I think people should read it. I read it in a week, so I took my time reading it to get through and to take it all in. And some bits were hard, obviously. Some bits were fascinating, and I hope you have all the success in the world with your book. And it's great to see you commentating and hearing your different opinions as well. So thank you for giving me some time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the interview.